Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. So this video comes a couple days after I recorded my last batch of Adam Raccoon videos because I recorded so many, I jumped into the next books and I wasn't sure what to talk about at first. And what I think is in my first few videos, I had a thesis for each one. I was trying to focus on one specific topic like line work or paint style, warm and cool color, atmospheric perspective. And so what I think, so I don't try to force something, is I'll still do a storybook time and talk about neat elements of the art, but I'm not going to try to force a theme or a thesis on these last few videos. So this one, Disney legend Glen Keane's children's book, Adam Raccoon, Lost Woods. This continues the themes of him just being an excellent artist, always being consistently strong, always being expressive. And my first thought when reading this story was that maybe it was an Adam and Eve allegory because the little red ball might be like the forbidden fruit, but that doesn't really work in the context of the story. I read this more as a illustration of storing up your treasures in heaven rather than storing up your treasures here on earth. And that's sort of the Christian subtext, but beyond that, it also works as just an excellent story, an excellent children's book, because Glen Keane can tell a story. So let's just dive in. I'll tell you the story as we go, and I'll make observations on the art as we go. So I'm going to skip the very first page because that's an establishing shot of the tree where Adam Raccoon lives. And the tech, I want to skip it because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but the text makes allusion to the only light that you could see was pouring out of Adam Raccoon's window. And then notice that we zoom in on Adam Raccoon's window. So just another good example of the text in the words relating to the experience of looking at the pictures. I'm going to return to this illustration later because there are two really great shots of Adam Raccoon running, and I think we can make a really interesting contrast between them. So we're going to come back to this page later. So as we've seen before, King Aaron, he's a very solid, well-designed lion character. Adam Raccoon, he's a squat, simple shape. He's that simple peanut-shaped cartoon character that hundreds of iconic cartoon characters follow. So what I'm going to look at this one a bit, I think, is maybe a little bit of color theory and a little bit more just spotting good examples of line work. I've talked about these ideas before, so I'm just going to try to find examples. So King Aaron has arrived to take Adam Raccoon on a walk, and Adam Raccoon has been preparing, and he thinks he needs all this stuff on his trip with King Aaron, and King Aaron thinks that's just going to weigh him down. As they begin, it's a comedic bit. Adam's all ready to go, and then King Aaron says, "Well, you're going the wrong way." And look at that. So similar location, and just one great expression as his steps forward are stopped by King Aaron pulling on his tail. All right, now the story began at sunrise. So in early morning times and late at night time, sunrise and sunset, the effects of light are different than at noon. They are cooler than at high noon where everything is warmer. So the palette is more bluish, more greenish, and more purplish, with the sun being the warmest thing. So I think this is a good point to talk about warm and cool color. And the problem with warm and cool color is a little bit of it could be subjective based on the colors that are surrounding it. But I think the objective part of warm and cool is that red, orange, and yellow most often read as warm. Blue, green, and purple most often read as cool. But depending on what kinds of colors you have overall, they could actually fudge a little bit. So green or purple could actually, if you have a composition that's almost all entirely blue, green and purple are going to feel warm. If you have a composition that's almost entirely red, orange, and yellow, green and purple are going to feel cool. And this relates to a broad principle in color theory, which is that almost all color theory, we interpret colors by the colors that are around them. Bright colors look brighter next to dull colors. Bright colors look duller next to other bright colors. The other principle I learned about warm and cool color from my art teacher isn't as intuitive as red, orange, and yellow are warm colors, because you just think of fire, red, orange, yellow. That you have a very easy way to remember that. The other principle is lighter colors tend to feel cooler and darker colors tend to feel warmer. And the problem with that is it's a little harder to remember because you could mix it up. My way of remembering it I'd say, well, snow is cool and it's bright white. So lighter colors are cooler. Dark blankets, the color black absorbs sunlight, therefore darker colors are warmer. But can you see how you might get mixed up on that? Maybe you could say, well, gee, the sun is bright white and it's warm. The frozen tundra of the north, that can get pretty dark, and that's cold. So that's why I think this either might be a bit more subjective, or I don't know if my teacher meant that to be generally or more specifically in the realm of painting, because this was the Renaissance man, that his classes. The Renaissance man's illustration was when you were painting with white paint and charcoal, the mixing white paint with your charcoal had the effect of bringing out bluish color, and those parts of the paintings would feel cool compared to the parts of the drawing that were just charcoal and would be a richer, warmer dark. So I am not sure if this is a universal principle of color theory or that this was just my teacher's way of explaining it, but lighter colors cool, darker colors warm. I think we'll see a couple examples of that as we go. Here, right, see a cool light stream where that feels cooler than the warm grass. I've loved everything about these books, and I've also praised how some of the two-page spreads are so deliberately designed so that a child who's reading them understands everything. This one actually was a little bit confusing because I thought this stream was continuing from here, where maybe a different angle might have benefited these 2 pages just to help visually separate these. But there you go. That's the one nitpick I've noticed so far in about 5 of these book reviews. So after King Aaron swings across the river, Adam takes a step. And, once again, you see the action line leaning back, the toe coming forward. Every little kid knows how, balance and how weight works from playing with their toys and knocking over their blocks. So what happens? Zip, splash. We see the splash. The rocks were very slippery. This is comedically stated because it's an understatement. We've seen the rocks were slippery here with this great expression and everything flying. We've read the splash, we've seen the splash, and then we read the consequence. This is just a great little bit of comedic understatement, I think. Adam Raccoon struggles to get all his stuff back, but all he can get is his little red ball and an emphasis on the expression at this important point. After that, King Aaron picks him up, and Adam asks, well, can't I at least bring my little red ball? And King Aaron foreshadows that it'll just bring you trouble. Now, is this a story that's saying it's wrong to have any worldly possessions at all? No, I think this is one where you kind of need the Christian subtext to get this story, because if all King Aaron was just a lion character and all Adam Raccoon was just a raccoon, this would feel like this is a story about not having any toys or things in your life at all. What I think this is a story about is this is a story about Adam relying on his stuff to protect him rather than relying on King Aaron, who, like Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia, is a metaphor for God. And the lesson that Adam learns in this book is to rely upon King Aaron and not upon the things of this world. And the little red ball represents the one little thing you hold on to rather than God within the context of this story. So in they go into the Lost Woods, and you can see how this is the same kind of artist who would work on Beauty and the Beast. Can't you? Similar kind of ghostly wood atmosphere, similar way of drawing the trees. Keen has developed. Keen's drawing style matches with the Disney style because all those artists are lending their talents to those movies, but they're also learning from each other to create what we call the Disney style. The Disney style is the contributions of hundreds of artists over decades, creating that style and passing that style down onto their peers. I really love this. Wavy, pointy lines to suggest hair standing up on end, and that even just the effect of looking at those lines, I think that gives me that feeling that lets me identify with Adam here. So Adam hears a howling, and after they're led through the woods, then they're in sunshine, and Adam thinks he's safe. He starts to play with the little red ball, and he drops it, and off it goes. And again, we're seeing excellent action lines. The motion lines show us where things are going. And Adam gets lost in the Lost Woods. All right, now this is an example of a 2-page spread that I think was designed as a 2-page spread because this tree continues here, but the space is funny. So here's the foreground, here's the background, and I think this is meant to disorient us. Right now he's here, And now, well, gee, now he's here. So our understanding of space is confused and distorted subtly. It's not a surrealist painting, but it's emphasizing the idea of being lost by making the space that we exist in not quite understandable. Small atom, large atom to see his expression. All right, here's the other running pose I was looking at. So let's do our compare contrast from when Adam was rushing to the door to see King Aaron. All right, so in both of them, we notice that Adam has a action line that is pointing forward, but it's more exaggerated here in his fearful moment. Excited, fearful. His facial expression gives us what we need to know about wide eyes, but smiling here, a gasp here. His ears, because animals communicate with their ears, that gives us more. That gives us more information. Fearful body language that you'd see in a dog or a cat. More open body language. The point of the fingers, extending outwards, grasping at straws. I thought a lot about whether I think the mark making here adds to that too, because I was going to say this is a very light line and this is a very thick line. And that kind of thick, bold line, I think, emphasizes this thrust forward, that motion. But this has some pretty thick, bold lines too. I think it's just a very similar type of pose, a very similar type of motion, that rush forward. But everything that you see in this one is just cranked up here. And this is another example of building an idea. I don't even know if Glen Keane deliberately meant these two drawings to be compared this way since they're so far apart, but it's such a similar pose. I thought it made for a really great compare-contrast. So Adam falls in the middle of the forest, and just like in both Beauty and the Beast, some wolves come out and approach him. Adam cowers in fear. I'm going to have to skip a bit. Adam cowers in fear from the wolves, and then he looks up and sees that the wolves are cowering in fear and retreating. And behind him, he sees King Aaron. And Aaron leads him out of the forest, and all that's left behind is the little red ball, and Adam's forgotten about it because he has what he needs now to keep him safe and for him to feel secure. Once again, a bright, intense yellow at kind of this symbolic, victorious moment, and back to this sort of cool color palette as they leave the Lost Woods. So, as we've seen with this series, we're consistently excellent, consistently paying attention to the craft, and consistently paying attention to the details to build the story. I didn't have a thesis for this one or just exactly one aspect of Glen Keane's drawing that I wanted to focus on, but those poses of Adam running are fantastic, and I love getting to see that contrast. I've got 2 more of these books left in the series, and then we're going to bring some more comic book reviews back to this channel. Number 1 Marmaduke fan, love you guys, catch you later.